Welcome to this Marval demonstration video. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to install and use the Azure DevOps integration. The first thing I'll do is go through the functionality of this integration so that you can see what it does. So we have a button here that's the Azure DevOps integration. On the request screen, if I click on that, I can see linked work items and I can create a linked work item to this bug. So I select the project, I select my organization, and then I can select a work type. Now I can change this text here and I can add an attachment as well. So that has created the linked work item. And if I click on this work item, it will go to where that work item is in Azure DevOps. So you can see here, this is the created issue with all of the items. So that's created that's linked to the work item. If I want to link a different work item, I can click the link there, and then you select the organization, and you can type in the work item ID. So if I want to link 38, or let's say I want to link 35 to this one, and then that will link that there. So that's one of the pieces of functionality in this. So I can see that's in status to do. If I change that status here and I change it to doing, I've configured this so that this doing will then complete the Marval status. So I can see there, this is status new. And if I refresh this, you can now see that that has been moved into completed status. And so the integration from, or the webhook from Azure DevOps has moved that into completed, from new through work in progress, and then into completed. You'll also see that there's a new status here. This status has been moved to completed by the related Azure DevOps project, test project. So it adds a note there for you also to see what has happened in the status there. So we've explored the functionality of the integration. I'll go through now how the integration is configured and set up and how we install that from the integration platform. So if we move over to the integration platform here, this can be reached at integration.marval.cloud. We have the Azure DevOps integration here. To install this, we click on Add Remove Integrations, and then you find the integration under here. This is where it is here, and then you click on add. This has already been added, so it just says remove. That will prompt you for a key which you need to copy, and it will also at the same time download the integration for you. So once it's downloaded and you've installed it, you can click on this button here, and then you'll see where to configure all the items. So the enable status dropdown is a drop-down box, which I'll show you now. So if we click on the integration here, we can click on this status drop-down and move the status directly from here. So this is currently in doing status. If we move this to do, that will update the issue for us. So that's now in to do. And if we move this to doing, that's now in doing. It updates fairly quickly. The app registration client ID is the client ID in Azure that you use for access to your Azure DevOps. And I'll go through that setting now and show you how that works. So I'm going to copy this client ID and I'm just going to search for this in Azure. So here we have the integration. And that client ID is this client ID here. That's the only thing that you need to configure in the integration because your authentication all goes through that. So it's quite a secure setup here. So there's a few things you need to configure with this app registration. In authentication preview, you'll need to configure the redirect URL. So this is listed on the README in the plugin page. So if we go to the plugin page, in here, there's a README, and it will tell you what your single page application redirect URL address is here. So for me, this points to our dev system, and it has other information there. So that's what we enter here. If you don't enter that correctly, I'll show you what happens, because it's important to be able to understand what this error message looks like. I'm just going to get rid of some items here. And now if I click on this here, it will attempt to authenticate, but I'll get an error message saying the redirect URI specified in the request does not match the URLs configured. So you need to copy this and then search in Azure, or load your app registrations and find the app registration with this ID, and then modify it by adding in that one there. So what I'll do with this is I'm going to copy that, and I can edit these and get rid of this older version, and then paste that in there. And then that will work now. The other thing you have to do for this configuration is to add the API permissions. So the API permissions are these ones as follows: user impersonation, which is default, vso.identity, and vso.profile, and graph user.read. And so these need to be granted admin consent for that to function. So that's all you need to do for the app registration. Once that's set up, you just put the client ID here, and then the application will request access on behalf of your user there. So the other thing you need to configure is the Azure DevOps custom field name. At the moment, we have this as Marval number. This needs to be a text field in Azure DevOps. And I'll just go through how ours is set up now. And in the README of the plugin, it has a section that says configuring custom field. And so to create a custom field to link MSM request number to Azure DevOps, follow the steps below. So we'll go to our organization. This is this name here, and we'll go to organizational settings, and we'll click on the process. So we have already created a cloned process, and if I go into the process there, I go into issue, and then we'll see there's Marval number. And to get Marval number there, you click on new field, and you can create or use an existing field. So you can select the item from here. And so we would have selected Marval number and then added that field to the screen to make it appear here. But you can create a new field. It needs to be text single line, and you can call the field whatever you like. So that's how to add the field. And that's the one that's listed here. So back to the dashboard, the other thing you need to make sure is that the MSM connection status is healthy. The way to get this healthy is to go into the core settings and to set up everything in the core settings here. The query link and display link, if you have an internet facing system, should be the same. For this integration, you're not required to use your Microsoft Tenant ID. In terms of your Marval version, there is no version requirement for this integration. Any Marval version greater than about version 14 will work fine. So back to the plugin. There's a plugin key here which you get prompted to enter when you install the integration. There's the app registration client ID and other details that you've already filled in from the integration page. So the status drop down we enter as just a Y or an N, and that's what I described earlier with the status change on Azure DevOps. You can click here to open Azure DevOps. So that will open your Azure DevOps page to log in, and then it's just an easy link to get to that page. The Azure DevOps to MSM field mapping are those statuses from Azure DevOps to Marval. So I have completed here and doing. These two obviously have to exist. So if I go into the bug that we were in before and I click on the task workflow, I can see that there's a completed there. So I can set any one of these statuses, and then the integration will attempt to move between each of the statuses. If you have a business rule preventing that move, then the status won't move. It will get up to the point where it can move and it will stop there. So if we have a mandatory field that is mandatory at completed and we want to get to closed, then and we're in new, so then the integration will move from new to work in progress. It will then move to completed, but it will be prevented from moving to closed until the mandatory field is filled out. So that's just something to be aware of with the status moves. We can test the plugin here and then see if it's successful. So what this does is a query to Azure DevOps using our client ID, just to make sure that we can get information back. The create status webhook in Azure DevOps will go to Azure DevOps. When you click create, it will show you a screen with your current webhooks if you have them, and whether you've subscribed or not. It will also tell you if you're in a different version of the plugin, so you can update this. So every time you update the plugin version, you'll need to update two things: the app registration, redirect URL in here, and you'll need to go into the plugin and then just click on create there and update these. So if I was to click on this one, and if I delete this and then refresh the screen, then it will say missing, and so I can click on that button and click OK, and then it will say webhooks created successfully. And if I refresh this, then the subscription will be there. So that's service webhook. So what this does is, on the event of any work item being updated in this test project, it will send a query back to Marval saying that the work item's updated, and then Marval will respond with that. If it sees that there's a linked request, it will update the request status for you automatically. If we click on add new item here, we can see there's help text that says Azure DevOps stage and Marval status. So the only other thing is if we add this item here and we say done to completed, and let's change this to another status that we have there, work in progress. When we click save, you also have to click apply on the bottom right, otherwise that won't actually save. So that concludes the configuration side of the Azure DevOps integration. If you would like any more information or put in any feature requests, then please get in contact with your local Marval support representative. Thanks for watching.